Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good today. Time for another installation of instructional fishing here. Actually, I'm on my way down to Grand Lake right now for an instructional trip. And looks like it's going to be a good day. It's a little bit cloudy out, maybe a chance of rain, but never lasts too long this time of year. But hey, I've been getting a few questions on one particular topic as far as flipping goes. Whether to use braid or fluorocarbon. And this question comes up quite a bit, so I wanted to do a little YouTube video on it, sort of give you my thoughts on it. I've been through the entire evolution over the past 40 years of line to flip with. I mean, like a lot of people, I flipped with monofilament for years and years and years. Excuse me. And never really had much problems with it. The downside about monofilament back then was it's quite a bit stretchy, and it had quite a bit of memory to it. So, if you had it on your reel for a while, it got pretty kinky and coily, and a lot of times we'd have to hook it onto your trailer and straighten it out. And still, monofilament is a decent choice to flip with, especially when you're flipping heavier tests, like, 25, 30 pound tests. I used to flip 30 pound test mono a lot on a jig, and it would still work now, but ever since I started using Seaguar fluorocarbon it's been about 20 years ago now, that's pretty much all I use. But first of all, if you all have followed me before much talking about line, you know that I'm not a big fan of braided line. I use it in certain applications because there are times when it's the best thing to use in those situations, particularly if you're flipping super heavy matted cover with big weights. It all got started in Florida years ago, flipping those big 1 ounce weights in the mats, and I still use it for that application sometimes. And also I'll use it if I'm flipping super thick flooded cover, where it's just like super gnarly and thick and the water's not real clear. Say if I've got visibility like under 2.5 feet or so, and I'm fishing deep, thick cover like that, and I don't like to use it, but a lot of times your land ratio, your bite to land ratio is terrible, even using fluorocarbon in those situations, particularly if you're like flipping into flooded stuff that's like over 5 foot deep. You'll lose a lot of fish like that. And even though the braid may cut down on the bites that you get, I think it's still a better choice. So given in that situation, what I'll do is my rule of thumb is 90% of the time, if I'm flipping matted vegetation, matted grass, hydrilla, hyacinths, that type of stuff, I'm using braided line. I'm using the Seaguar Smackdown, and even though that line is fairly not invisible, but it's a very natural color that blends with the water pretty good, I always like to touch it up a little bit with a black magic marker for about the first 5 feet. Sort of blends it a little bit more, because a lot of times when I'm flipping braid, you're flipping in tannic water, like in Florida, that type of stuff. That's usually where the aquatic vegetation grows. So that's what I'll use that. But most of the time when I'm flipping, I prefer fluorocarbon line. I use Seaguar Invisex line. I've used all the different Seaguar lines, Abrazex, Invisex, Tatsu. I like the way that Invisex fishes a little bit more. It's a super strong, tough line. It's very fishable, very pliable. I like the diameter on it, and so most of the time when I'm flipping, I'm using anywhere between 15 to 20 pound test, and most of the time it's more like 20 to 25 pound test. If I'm flipping and pitching around say like dock pilings, more sparse type cover, that's when I'll go down in my line size a little bit to the 15 and 17. But if I'm putting my bait over something, a lot of times I'm using 20, 25. And if I'm fishing, dirty water, even if I'm fishing sparse cover, I'll still use the heavier line, the 20, 25 pound test line. Now, the knots on the thing that I use is, you know, I've experimented with a lot of different knots, and to me the best knot that you can use for flipping with fluorocarbon is a double uni knot. And you can just, I can't really explain to it on here how to tie it, but you can Google a tutorial and see how that's done. Double uni knot, it's the strongest knot I've ever used. I've never broke that knot before, ever. I used a Palomar knot with fluorocarbon before I found out better, because a fluorocarbon Palomar knot on a fluorocarbon is a terrible knot to use, because the way the line lays across, when you double a Palomar knot, the way the line lays across itself, it'll actually break your knot sometimes on the hook set. And I learned the hard way. I learned by breaking fish off, particularly on lighter line when I was flipping, like 15-17 pound test line, until I moved, and Aaron Martin's the one that actually showed me the double uni knot, and ever since I've been tying that, I just love it. Now on the braided line, I don't like the double uni knot, even though you can tie it on a braided line. I don't really like the double uni knot, because the double uni knot tends to be a bulkier knot, and if you're flipping like 50-65 pound test braid and you tie that double uni knot on braid, your knot is massive, and it's just it's too big, and it, you know, interferes with the way your bait's rigged and that type of stuff. So I've experimented with different knots on braid. I've experimented with the Snell knot and the Palomar knot, both, and everybody's got this thing in their mind that they need this Snell braided line in order to get the hook to come up at the right angle. Until, you know, a couple of years ago, I saw a video by Brandon Polinick, and he was questioning that. He was actually doing a comparison side by side of the Palomar knot versus the Snell knot on braided line, and it really made a lot of sense to me, as far as, you know, how that hook actually either hook the roof of the mouth, the side, or whatever. So after a lot of different experimentations, I've went to the Palomar knot on the braided line, because you don't break off. It's a small diameter knot. It's a strong knot on a braided line, and you don't have, it will not break like fluorocarbon will on a Palomar knot, and it's a quick, easy knot to tie. So that's my knot to go to, even when I'm punching or any type of punching situation when I'm flipping, and I've had, you know, pretty good success on that. One of the things that I have found out about flipping with braided line, as far as hooking the fish better, are there two different things. You don't ever want to set on a loose, you know, on a slack line, you know, with braided line. You always want to basically just pull into them. And two is, you don't want to use too big of a hook, because I think a problem a lot of people have is they want to try to use the biggest hook that they can get by with flipping. But it's been my experience, after lots and lots of time and error, is a little bit smaller hook than what you think would work actually hooks the fish better. And how I figured this out myself is, I went through a period of about 5 years ago where I was just losing a ton of fish flipping, and I was using a mix of the straight shank flipping hooks and the EWGs. And what I would try to do, I would try to use the biggest hook that I could that didn't interfere with the way the bait looked or the way the bait worked. So I wound up using a lot of like 4 and 5/0 hooks, and I was losing a lot of fish. And I noticed that in practice, I've got a junk hook box that I use in practice, because I'm not really concerned about catching the fish, and a lot of times I'll cut the hooks off and they're rusted. And what I started doing is, you know, I just pick out like a little 2 or 3/0 hook to flip with right off the bat in practice, and I started noticing that I would never lose fish. I'd be using these hooks that I didn't really care if I lost fish or not, and I'd never lose them. So I started downsizing my hooks a little bit on my soft plastics to like the 2 to 4/0 size more and more, because some hook sizes, a 4/0 and some hooks are different than a 4/0 and other hooks. But I use Gamakatsu hooks for the most part, and I've went a lot to my flipping applications with like a 3/0 Gamakatsu, either straight shank hooked or EWG flipping hook. And my land or bite to land ratio has went up tremendously from that. So anyway, here's the big overview on this whole braid to fluorocarbon. Here's my advice: use fluorocarbon if you can, because you're going to get more bites. It's invisible. I just think that it's going to increase the number of bites that you get. It's not, and braid is not going to increase your bites. It's not going to increase it at all. All braid makes it, the only advantage that you have with braid is it allows you to get those fish out of heavier cover a little bit better than fluorocarbon. But if you're in a situation where you can get by with fluorocarbon, use it. Only use braid when you absolutely have to, when you're fishing super thick cover and you're losing fish on fluorocarbon. And on top of that, you know, like I said, tie the double uni knot on the fluorocarbon, tie the Palomar on the braided line, and reduce your hook size. And I think that that's going to add up to not only more fish for you, but get more of those fish in the boat. So anyway, keep those comments coming. Like I said, if you like the channel, if you like what I'm doing here, please hit subscribe. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you all how important subscribers are in this YouTube initiative that we're all starting. So like I said, I really appreciate, you know, the people that, you know, are willing to do that. And like I said, send me comments if you like, you know, me to comment on certain topics. You know, I'd be glad to. I try to read all the comments that I get. You know, I try to respond to most all of them I get, but I do read all of them. So I do appreciate that. And anyway, I hope you're all having a good day, and we'll check in later on with a new video. See y'all later.